Okay, hi everyone. This is just a very short video to explain how to use this basic TouchDesigner network that I've made that will send G-code to our XY drawing plotter. It's also a very similar idea to how we can eventually control the robot arms using the same sort of TouchDesigner system. But okay, so the main things that you'll need to check before you get working, it's a good idea, set your TouchDesigner network back to the beginning. I've got it paused here. Spacebar will unpause it, just so I'm not randomly sending data as I connect. In your chop exec, you can always toggle that off while you're connecting if you're not sure. First thing you need to do with your serial DAT is you'll just have to check that it's looking at the right port for your for the plotter. When it's connected, it will show up here, and it will be a USB serial followed by a series of numbers, and those numbers will probably change depending on where you've got it connected on your computer and so on. But if I was connected here, I was in class, this is where I had it, and it will just be in this drop down here. Other than that, then I could just turn on my chop execute, I could press play, and it would start sending G-code. Now, we've also got this little preview top here. I can preview it in the background by pressing the display toggle here. If I'm not seeing the full text, I guess I can just make the font a little bit smaller, something like that. And that's just showing us like what we're sending at any one time. So my Z, my pen is down at the moment, and my X is here and my Y is here. Now, these are things you'll probably want to adjust even before you get started. If I press pause again, I might want to, by default, set my Z height to be at 5, which is sort of 5 millimeters above the page, or it should be. If you don't know which is which, I've put these little labels here, Z, Z down here, X here, and Y here. I guess I could, if you want them to be more obvious, you can make them a color. Like I could click here and make them yellow or red or something like that. But that's where our labels are. So Z height, if I want to change the Z, at the moment, the Z is just sending in millimeters directly to this merge chop here. So if I type in 5 here, we can see in the background our Z is sending at 5. And this is a really simple network because our pen is just moving up and down. Everything else has a little more complexity. Let's look at the X first. The X, what I've got here is Chan X. That's what our code is looking for. So my Chan X at the moment is 280. I've got a limit here of 0 and 1,000. That's looking at the big plotter. If you're looking at the smaller one, this number might be a lot smaller. It might be like 500. I've got a math here, and what the math is doing is because my input signals are starting, like my LFO goes from about minus 0.5 to 0.5, or it's actually going -1 to 1. I've mathed it here to 0.4 to 0.4, could be 0.5 to 0.5. There's a lot of different ways we can set our limits. But if that's coming in at -0.5 to 0.5, what the math here is doing is converting that into a range. And just for safety, we'd put it at 50 to 950. If we were using the whole plotter, it'll be 0 to 1,000. But that 50 to 950 is good because it means we shouldn't, go over the edge of our paper or anything like that. If I want to just have a constant value, like a constant value of, I guess, like 200, like 20 centimeters, I can use this switch and just switch to that input. And now we don't have an LFO moving back and forth. We've just got the X set by whatever we put that number. With the Y, it's very similar, just a little bit more complexity. I've got the same LFO that sends a number back and forth. I've also got a constant, just like here, where I can just send one number. Actually, I made a mistake. This, setting that at 200, I've got the same math here of going -0.5 to 0.5. So that should have actually been like a 0.1 or something like that. And we can look at the numbers that are going in there. So with the Y, we've got a constant where we can just put in a value. We've got an LFO that would move our Y up and down, up and down on the plotter. And then I've got this microphone input, which is the audio device in. Basically, all I've had to do is I've taken it Analyze will basically simplify the signal to a floating point value. Lag smooths the signal a little bit. So instead of it being super jumpy, it will be a little bit smoother. Limit, I've rounded it off. I've got the quantize thing here set to round. And instead of having all of these decimal points, I've just got a smaller value. And this math at the moment, I don't think is doing anything. And the null is just receiving the value. And then again, we're mathing it here. So all of that, that's just trying to reduce the complexity of that signal to make it something quite simple. But as we discussed, because we have a real-time data input coming from the microphone, I've wanted to compress that as much as I can. I guess I could look at some other things, like looking at the rate, the data rate coming in. But the other way I've compressed it is here in my code. I've set a limit here. If I go into my viewer active, I've got a limit here of the minimum time between commands is actually very large at the moment. It's half a second. So that means we're only getting one GCode message maximum twice per second, and the tolerance is 0.1 millimeters. And that was just because the microphone was sending way too much data, and I needed to clamp it somewhere so that I didn't send too many messages to my plotter and get an overflow issue. Now, if you want to sort of tweak this and see if you can get something that runs for longer, that is more sensitive, and that doesn't get a lag, you could indeed experiment with, perhaps on the audio device, in looking something at the rate. I wonder if we lowered that, that might also fix some of the problems. I hadn't thought of that, but looking at it now, it seems like another obvious thing to check. So that might give us a smoother, more accurate drawing. But again, totally up to you. And I just recommend you connect this and have a bit of fun with it. Okay, bye-bye.